I call it turning tragedy into purpose, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I've taken the worst possible experience of my life and turned it into creating positive energy in the world, creating that community that my family really needed. Now other families have that community where you have that shared experience of, hey, nobody understands. Now I know you understand me. We can talk about this, commiserate about it, and I'll feel better knowing I'm not alone.
Get ready for hot takes and insight from local industry experts in real estate, business, and lifestyle. He used to play ball with the Padres. He played hockey for the Lobos. Now they're crushing it in the real estate game. Together, they'll showcase the best of the Duke City. This is All About You, ABQ.
Well, that's right. It is all about you, ABQ. Now, the goal of the show is to highlight the best of our city's industry experts in real estate, culture, and lifestyle so that you walk away with some value and feeling inspired. Now, the way we like to do that is to answer the questions you may have or interview the guests you want to see. So we invite you to join the conversation. You can reach out on our social media up here or join our email list to get some timely tips about our community and real estate market. Hey, I'm Skip Adams, owner of Sold by Skip Real Estate here in Albuquerque.
Grant Harvey, home loan expert.
Now, you probably recognize Grant as the head coach of the University of New Mexico men's Lobo hockey team, but now he's absolutely crushing it in the mortgage space.
You've seen Skip on HGTV's House Hunters, and he's part of the top 2 producing real estate agents in the city.
Yeah, here's why you're going to want to stay tuned. We're joined in studio by Eric Carter-Landin of Voiceless. It's a New Mexico based nonprofit focused on justice for families of crime victims. So it's going to be a real serious episode this week. No jokes. We're going to get into the facts. We're going to look at some of the pros and cons of living in New Mexico, and the cons obviously being the crime rate.
Yeah, no jokes to open up our segment.
Yeah. So everyone, wipe that smile off your face. This is all business.
Give you something to cry about.
And then obviously stay tuned to the end of the show. It's everybody's favorite, Skip's Tips. But Grant, I'm glad to see you in the chair because there was some worry whether or not you were going to be out of the hospital and standing upright.
Yeah, so this guy, I can't blame him because everyone always goes, hey, you gave me your bronchitis. And it's like, that's how illnesses work. But I always get a good preview about what's to come from Skip because he's got a cesspool called Kids who bring and gather all the viruses, and he gets it first. So I go, hey, what's to come? He's like, you're going to throw your guts up. So I had norovirus, and I'll get into the titling of that in a little bit. But yeah, I remember when I used to have cool stories to tell you, like, hey, what'd you do this weekend?
Got in a fight with a hobo.
I got my health back.
Yeah.
Ate some fiber.
My hip's still hurting, though.
Yeah, this damn weather, my back.
No, it's funny. You always give me a hard time for being, having kids and being like off the radar or you're sick or doing something. And so I always get a chuckle when you call me like on that, like you text me Monday, like, I don't know if I'm going to live. Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, the polarity of how you can feel and how I felt on Monday, like there's no way I'm ever going to see outdoors again. Maybe I'll crawl, and then you go, I'm back. But I'll tell you about being sick. It makes you appreciate your baseline health.
I'll tell you what, man. Yeah, they always say that's the most important thing is your health. But then, like when you're sick, you're like, I'd give anything to not be this way. Especially when your phone's just blowing up with emails from work. And
isn't it overwhelming? The mental block about I can't handle this, and you're like, the guy that needs to take these phone calls, he's long gone. He's a goner. He's literally. Sorry, you did loan with Grant, the guy who's frail and gaunt Harvey. Is who I become.
Man, you got a big week though coming up, Mr. Valentino. Mr. 45, they call him.
Yeah, you know what that is?
Colt 45.
Yeah, that's It's a number that hasn't meant much, and we've always joked around about people asking my age, and it will not give you a good idea of what I'm about. It's just a formality. So 45 years ago, I came out to the world.
Came out to the world in that pink shirt.
Yeah. Now I'm back in the closet. But it's interesting because I've always kind of thought about age roughly, and I go, where should I be at? And then obviously charting me with any age is like impossible.
Well, good, buddy. I hope you have a happy birthday, and we'll follow up next week to see if you survived it or if you passed on your norovirus to those that you care most about. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on locally here in the real estate market. One thing that we always talk about is just how office buildings have gone by the wayside, and there's so many measures to convert old unused office buildings into livable space now.
Yeah.
But one of the most iconic buildings in the Albuquerque skyline is going to be shutting its lights off. This is the Wells Fargo building. They've announced plans to close its downtown Albuquerque branch inside the well-known greenlit tower.
Wow.
Yeah, location will officially shut its doors May 7th. And after the closure, customers are encouraged to visit a nearby branch. But the future plans include transforming several floors into apartments, while the ground level will feature office spaces and a restaurant.
That is pretty cool. The thing is, those would be the highest, I guess, residence you can have. The highest one I think before that was when I lived off of like 10th Street near the doghouse, and it got to like 12 floors, and it was like the skyscraper of all residences. So I think that might be a cool conversion. It's something that I think is like a good hybrid between big city living and then where we're at now. I'm anxious to see how there's so much space to manipulate, and there's some things that they absolutely can't, corrupt or adjust. And so it'd be interesting to see what they do with those spaces. I have seen, besides Albuquerque High, the old Albuquerque High, I've seen in other places like Denver where they convert the classrooms into something that becomes livable, and you go, wow, that was a very creative way to use the things partitioned and whatnot. But it's kind of fascinating to go, at one time this used to be a tax attorney's office and stuff, and now here I am.
You were haunted by 1040s pass or whatever, W9 easy.
It would be interesting to see what the price point is, and Albuquerque always has me asking, what's the fetching price for these properties, and are they being filled? It'll fill in a lot of blanks for me to figure out where we're at, because I would anticipate these being, I don't know, what, 300,000, 200,000?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Because there's not a lot of housing in that area. I mean, it's not, it's more of like that's where like the courthouse is and everything. It's, it's not like a.
So there's plenty of parking in a way for, like, I think that parking lot in the Wells Fargo, if I remember, if you maybe borrowing parking from the convention center, but like there's ample parking in that. There's almost too much where I'm like, how many customers are withdrawing $20 at a time? But the thing that I always remember about living in something high up, not as high up as that, but sometimes you would really deliberate, do I really need to go back to my car? I left my phone. Well, we'll have to hear from you.
You used to visit me in San Diego, and we lived in a medium high rise, but it was always one of those things like, why don't you have any groceries? Be like, because it's too much of a pain in the ass.
By the time I get up here, I ate them all. I'm starving.
But yeah, no, recent increase in housing inventory. New listings rose about 8% from the same time last year in the first 4 weeks of the year. Homes are sitting a little bit longer on the market now due to more inventory. So for sellers, it's so crucial to price your home appropriately so that it doesn't become stagnant. For buyers, there's more options for you. And this is what we were talking about, is just that, we shift towards a more balanced market. Buyers have more say, and sellers got to be careful on what they're offering.
I was remarking upon whatever the market's doing, everyone absolutely abuses it. So before, when there's a housing shortage, the customer would be like, hey, can you please make sure that there's no rain coming down through my bedroom? Shut up. Do you want the house or not? Because there's 18 other people that want it. And now the buyers kind of have some wiggle room, and you hope that the buyers don't, take advantage or capitalize on that in something that's unfair. But what's dictating that is rates are something that a lot of people don't want to partake in right now. They're so high that the willingness of a borrower has to be there to match a good price. And sometimes, I always said this, is like a good price may not matter in the scenario or climate where rates are too high. It'd be like someone going, hey, Grant, this yacht's half off. It's going to be for $50 million. I'm like, good deal, still can't get it. So there may be some of that going on too, where just affordability isn't something to negotiate. Some people just purely can't afford a $350,000 house with 7% interest rate. So there's some people who are maybe in an advantageous state because they can't afford that mortgage, and hopefully the sellers and buyers are at a happy medium, which no one ever is. But
what else has got you amped up?
Yeah, so speaking of the norovirus, it kind of reminds me of, parents basically reclassifying things that we know to be common. But I'll tell you how it comes as a bachelor on this, Grant's Rants. Did you know that's not a real cigarette?
Again?
Yeah, so getting the norovirus really opened up my eyes to many things like heaven and the life after death. But where I'm going with this is the norovirus was cleverly named by parents who didn't want to say, I have disgusting stomach flu. So they have renamed a lot of things that we know as stomach flu, or I've got the, yaks, or whatever you want to call it. Parents have also done this. Pink eye? No, my son has conjunctivitis. Oh, okay, so it's not the gross thing. No, it still is. They fooled you. What about gastroenteritis? Oh, like my stomach's rumbling. Oh, do you have, gas? No, I have gastroenteritis. They have also found a clever way to tell you how old your kid is. Oh, he's 711 weeks old. Let me get my calculator. Can you just tell me he's 9? So I feel like firing back and be like, I'm turning 2,142 weeks for my birthday. Come and join me on my 2140th. That's really all for my Grant rants. Oh wait, I have one more. How come every kid can read at a 9th grade level in 4th grade? I guess that's the new 4th grade level. No one's amazing at this point. Reading levels are skewed. Bring up the bar. That's our Grant rants.
Always a good time. Here's why you're going to want to stay tuned. We're joined in studio by Eric Carter-Landin of Voiceless, the nonprofit here in New Mexico focused on bringing justice to families of crime victims. So either way, stay tuned. This is all about you, ABQ.
You're reading at a 1100 grade level.
How many weeks is that? Welcome back to UABQ. I'm Skip Adams, owner of Sold by Skip Real Estate Brokerage in Albuquerque.
Grant Harvey, home loan expert.
And we're joined in studio by Eric Carter-Landin of Voices, Silence No More, a nonprofit here in New Mexico. Eric, dude, thanks for showing up today.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Well, we got a lot to unpack today, but first of all, just want to get to know you a little bit. I mean, New Mexico, born and raised, dude. I love that. That's kind of the premise of our show, man. So talk about growing up in Socorro.
Socorro, I think I unfortunately lived there in the heyday of Socorro, where, we had local businesses and a bunch of stuff. Now it's a little bit, I feel like it's shrunk down a little bit, but it was nice. I hung out with my cousins all the time. We would ride bikes all over town, cause trouble. And, that small town feel, the only thing I really didn't like was you really can't do anything without everybody knowing that you're doing that thing. So that got kind of old for me.
Wait, so Socorro, is that Owl Cafe?
Yep. Well, that's San Antonio, south of Socorro. But yes, we claim it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I always tell people it's in Socorro.
Yeah.
Growing up, we would always, take road trips through New Mexico, obviously, and that was always our first stop or last stop, depending on where we were coming from. Get the green chili cheeseburger, throw $1 on the wall.
Isn't there a wildlife refuge near there too? As the Boy Scout, that's what I was doing. I didn't get to have any cheeseburgers, like try to live off the land. But no, they have a great wildlife refuge too.
They do, and they have the Festival of the Cranes in November, where all of the Canadian cranes fly down and hang out there.
That's where I would meet them. Being a Canadian myself, I would be like, so you could set their watch to where I was at.
So New Mexico, man, let's talk about New Mexico, the land of entrapment, dude. So what are some of the things, because in my business, it's real estate and it's bringing people to New Mexico and kind of showing the fun parts of it, the business owners, what it's like growing a business in New Mexico. But, what's been your experience? What are you nostalgic for when it comes to our state?
There's so much that I love about New Mexico. The food alone is everything, right? I think I never stop bragging about how good our food is. The culture is just so unique compared to anywhere else. I've traveled a lot of places in the United States, and our culture is just so different. And the vibe here is so different from everywhere else. People are so connected to the earth and to the land, and I just really love that about New Mexico. I think it's beautiful. It's the most, I think, underrated state in terms of beauty. I think we don't get enough credit for it. I think it's fine. I don't want too many people to know about it, but it is one of my favorite things.
Good, that's good to know. New Mexico and Albuquerque in itself is, the last affordable city in the Southwest, and we're seeing people from all over the world kind of discover us. So that's kind of the premise of the show, is just to put out some info and kind of introduce some interesting people with interesting backgrounds like you. And I know you have a story that kind of grew into this, this not-for-profit called Voices, Silence No More. Give me the premise. How did it all start, and what brought you here today?
Yeah, so almost 39 years ago, it'll be 39 in April, my baby brother was murdered by my mom's then boyfriend. And a lot of stuff happened around that. Where we're at now is 39 years without any resolution, without any justice without even a day in court. And this is in spite of the fact that the man confessed twice and failed 2 lie detectors in 1987. So that had a lot more weight in 1987 than it does now. But the 2 confessions kind of leave me stumped, right? Like, how do you confess to killing somebody twice and then you're still not in jail? I don't understand.
If you don't mind me just jumping in here,
Yeah.
so what was the premise upon this man still being loose and not getting the justice?
Yeah, well, so I'm currently actually investigating the case myself with a PI and my mom and an attorney. We're trying to figure out exactly what happened. From our initial investigations, we've learned that there's probably been a cover-up. He was very, very close friends with a lot of the police in town.
God.
They play basketball every weekend, and so we haven't uncovered everything yet. We're still looking at everything, but that is where kind of we are thinking like things started to break down.
I like, would you say this and agree that maybe the current trend of upturning and overturning what people found as fact and discoveries are at an all-time high when we see justices happen many years later? Does that make you feel encouraged that there's a growing push to
Right wrongs?
Yeah, and overcome like maybe what other people thought was fact and provide your own story?
Yeah, I think that right now, with true crime being the way that it is in the world and how popular it is, I think that it has an opportunity to do a lot of good, right? And so I'm using that kind of momentum to bring the story to the forefront, to shine light on what happened, because so far people have only heard like part of the story. And I don't think I even know the whole story. So as we're investigating this, we're probably going to find some stuff out, right? I am encouraged by that. I'm encouraged by people like my friend Julie Murray, who took control of her sister's case and put that on national spotlight, became the biggest podcast in the world. Like, there's so many things that I see with family members taking their cases in their own hands, investigating them, and then they just kind of blow the lid off of everything. So I'm excited about it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about it, because God forbid any of us are ever in that situation where you just go, well, what the hell? What do I do? Where do I turn?
There's no resolve. That's it, right?
I guess we'll just go home and scratch our head. So you've kind of come up with a solution, or at least a bridge to help families who are scratching their head looking for help.
Several solutions, right? So my whole mission has been to try to make sure that other families in New Mexico don't feel the way my family has felt for the last almost 4 decades. And so through just thinking about what I would have wanted, what I would have needed, what would have been helpful to me and my mom and I decided to found Angels Voices, Silence No More, in honor of my brother Jacob. And what we do is we try to fill in some of those gaps. We try to provide them with information, resources that they can access that they may not be aware exist, whether it's on a state, local, or federal level. We have quite a big list of things that we provide the families. But the biggest work that I'm proud of is the granting that we do. And so we grant funds to families of the missing and murdered, specifically with unsolved cases, to pay for funeral expenses, to pay for counseling, to pay for private investigations, DNA testing, billboards, anything that they might need, search and rescue supplies, whatever they might need to help them take their case and move it forward.
What do you think, and here's me listening to you, do you feel the same way I do about this disillusion that we had, that these certain people like doctors and detectives ought to have gone A, B, and C, and you find out the hard way that this wasn't what, disenchanted by the way they performed, and you thought, what, this isn't the way it's supposed to be, and you go, yeah, it is, and so then you can kind of share this sentiment with others, going, they fell short for me. Will make sure that the private investigating funding is very, I think, huge, because sometimes if you don't like the resolve, and no one's more invested than the family.
That's right.
And so I could see that oversight would be performed at a max when someone is looking to feel like justice has prevailed. Right.
Yeah, I think that we are taught in school that the justice system works a certain way, and we're led to believe that the bad guy always gets caught, the bad guy goes to jail. It's never an innocent guy that goes to jail or person that goes to jail. It's always the bad guy. And that's not always the case. Sometimes nobody goes to jail. Sometimes the wrong person goes to jail, which is also, I think, a huge injustice. And so I do get frustrated. I get frustrated with the laws in New Mexico. I get frustrated with some of the decisions that the judges make. I get frustrated with our lawmakers and what appears to somebody like me as inaction or unwillingness to address the real problems. But I also am a realist, and I understand that a lot of what we're experiencing with crime right now is a direct result of childhood trauma. And I don't have the numbers to back up what I'm saying, but I have the experience, right? And so I do want to eventually research this. I believe that we have I know that we have a huge issue with child abuse and childhood trauma in New Mexico. We have some of the worst outcomes out of the entire country. And our child protective services isn't always the best, right? Their hands are tied, or their focus is on reunification, when it maybe should be child safety, right? So you have somebody like me who's traumatized, who's experienced tremendous abuse. They'll turn to substances sometimes because they don't have access to counseling. They don't have access to interventions that might help them. That substance abuse could turn into petty crime, which could then escalate into violent crime. And so a lot of these solutions that we're coming up with are Band-Aids.
Yeah.
Right? We can't deal with what's happening in the streets of Albuquerque or in the streets of New Mexico until we deal with what's happening in the houses of kids in New Mexico.
That's interesting because you're talking about preemptive measures, and we always are worried about the aftermath of it all. When paying a little bit of care would mitigate some of the long-term, expensive, hard-hitting, violent outcomes that could happen if we just paid a little bit more attention. I do feel like there's a lot of times people feel like things ought to happen and the way things do happen, and that gap is dangerous because we all have this faith, and their faith is broken when the institutions or what powers that be are failing, and that's essentially what happened in your case.
Yeah, it is heartbreaking, and I've stopped calling it a justice system. I started calling it a legal system because I feel like there is an important distinction in what's happening. It is not necessarily just. The system itself is incredibly difficult to navigate, and it's incredibly difficult to get somebody to care about a Hispanic baby who died almost 4 decades ago.
Wow. So one of the steps that you took, which I find is fascinating, especially as podcast host, is you started True Consequences podcast. Give us some insight into, what your experience has been like hosting that show and what the premise of the show is.
Yeah, so I have always said, since what happened to Jacob and what happened to me, my child abuse as well, I've always wanted somebody to step up and say something about the epidemic that we're experiencing here. And I kept saying it as I grew up, like I wish somebody would do something, I wish somebody would say something. And then I think I was like mid-30s at the time, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna stand up, I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna say something. I'm tired of just waiting for somebody to do something. And so I created True Consequences. I call it my love letter to Jacob.
Sweet. It's sweet, and I know it's a labor of love, and I know there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of layers that you're probably experiencing right now from growing up, and we feel that there's a lot of passion behind your project.
Yeah, and so I wanted to create a platform where people could share their stories in their own words without having to worry about being edited for content or edited for time. I wanted to give them the space and the freedom to say whatever they wanted to say. And I was able to give a lot of families, that opportunity. I haven't produced an episode of True Consequences in a long time because I'm just like tapped out. I have so much going on. I do want to get back to it. Jacob's investigation right now is kind of my priority.
Great.
But the show is something that I'm super proud of. It grew, it hit, a lot of those top lists, the charts, and I made friends with some of the bigger podcasts in the industry, and it's been an awesome experience. And we've seen some of those cases come through that, they do get resolution.
That's great.
It's not necessarily the one the family wants,
Right.
when you get a plea deal and stuff like that, but several of the cases that
At least
were on
can
the
be
show
put to bed.
can be put to bed.
I would consider what you're doing, the avenues that you are enabling, you're a voice. you're a voice for something that was probably suppressed. And now someone has someone that can trust, they trust you and shares the same sentiment, and they feel like it's a safe place and maybe vent. And I feel like that's cathartic for people to not only identify and kind of grieve together, but also get the message out when, you know, they were probably bottled up in angst about not being able to tell the world about this injustice, and you helped that. So you're a great avenue. I can commend you on taking something that's unfortunate and finding a way to for it to be beneficial and help other people.
I call it turning tragedy into purpose, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I've taken the worst possible experience of my life and turned it into creating positive energy in the world, creating that community that my family really needed. Now other families have that community where you have that shared experience of, hey, nobody understands. Now I know you understand me. We can talk about this, commiserate about it, and I'll feel better. Yeah. Knowing I'm not alone.
Well, let me ask you this. So let's kind of switch gears to more of a business aspect, because as you know, as TV show hosts, you know, this is a labor of love for us as well. Mm-hmm. So behind the scenes, when it comes to producing a podcast and getting started, did you do it out of your garage or in a studio? I mean, how did you find microphones? How did you figure out how to produce your own show?
Yeah, it took me a while. The first couple seasons were rough.
Yeah, we know.
Waiting for those sponsors to come in.
Yeah. It took me a long time. I mean, I had to ask people that were doing better than me, hey, can you tell me what you're doing? Because what I'm doing sucks. And I need
a lot of echo in my microphone.
Yeah. It sounds like I'm in a bathtub. I don't know what's going on. So I had some friends that helped me through that, and that was great. I did it all myself. You know, I did start in my spare bedroom in my house, and then I eventually migrated into a studio. The podcast was able to pay for it. And I did that for a while. I kind of took my eye off the ball on the podcast because I've got so many other things going, but I think it was hard. It was hard. It was a grind. And when I stepped into the true crime space, there was already a huge true crime industry. And so I had to really cut through the noise and figure out, like, this is my niche.
Your competitive advantage, I feel, is, and the same for Skip and I, feeling like it's your passion and you believe in it. And so when you believe in something, you kind of don't even worry about beating or sorting things out. You go, well, I mean this, and my heart's in the right place. I think that supersedes any doubt you may have, because you're going, I'm telling a legitimate story, and like, I don't care the outcome. I hope it's great, but I'm going to tell this story regardless. And feeling like people are adhering to your podcast and your sentiment and feelings about injustice is a natural, it's organic.
Yeah, everyone's got that inside of them. Yeah, they want to know more.
When you believe in something, you know, it's really easy to turn out a product because you don't consider it a yield.
A job.
You're just going and send your message, and then, you know, people see a genuine people and they gravitate towards that. And especially your angle is like, it's cathartic for these people to have met you.
But let's talk about that, because it's one thing to have a show or have a podcast or have a non-for-profit that's out for help, but how do you find people to be on the show? How do you find the guests? How do you find the families that actually need Angels' Voices, Silence No More?
That's the $100 million question, right? For True Consequences, I think I spent a lot of time on the crime groups, on the missing pages, and then I would see some family posting, you know, they were looking for help. I would reach out and say, hey, here's how I can help. That's helped a lot to bring people in. That's worked really well. I think True Consequences, as it grew, kind of people started coming forward naturally, just because they started to learn that it was happening. And then as we found out that, like, the Attorney General's office and the DA's office was listening, the families were even more excited to come on the show.
Yeah, get some traction, right? And it's great that you have, again, I could say it's a voice, but everything you're talking about is organic. And I feel like when you start to build momentum, like, you don't ever have to worry about guests, because they're finding you and you become a guy who's known. And so to get the attention of the state is huge, because it's what everyone always wanted, but they don't have
a direct line to the mayor or whatever it is to listen.
And the story in itself speaks for itself. There's no campaigning or rallying like, did you hear me out? I think that's everything someone could throw their hat in the ring for. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit more about Angels Voices, because you are you're basically a business owner. You're running this thing. I mean, it's a non-for-profit, but you still have employees. You still have to pay bills. You still have to come up with the funds. So how do people become a sponsor, donate money, volunteers? What are you looking for to help it grow?
Oh yeah, so we actually don't have employees. We're 100% volunteer run. I did that on purpose. My goal has been to allocate 90% of the money that we receive directly into the hands of the families. So not directly into their hands. We pay direct to the vendors, but directly into their cases, because we don't want any impropriety. So we ask that they provide a vendor, whether it's a funeral home or a therapist, we pay that directly. We take donations in whatever way we can get them. So we have monthly donors that give $1, $5. We have a $5 Friday campaign every Friday, cheaper than a cup of coffee. You can fight for justice. So that's all done on GiveButter, or you can go through our website, angelsvoicesnm.org. Corporate sponsorships, we've got lots of packages available. We are always looking for sponsors. We'll be happy to put your name all over anything that we do. It's something that we have done with several. We worked with, I think, Mile Higher Media, Voices for Justice Media, several other creators and organizations. So any kind of money that anybody wants to give to us, we'll take it and we'll use it.
It looks like you're a guy that wears all hats, and I can tell you when you're really good at something and it's your baby, it's really hard to probably delegate authority because no one's going to do it better than yourself. I would say that because you're so good, you have so many, you're being tugged in a lot of directions for your own personal endeavors and helping out others. You kind of remind me of a modern day Walsh from America's Most Wanted, right? I mean, that kind of went by the wayside, and not to say anything bad about him, it just the popularity waned, but you're picking up almost where he left off and making it local and national in terms of your reach.
Unsolved Mysteries, right? That was the show, wasn't it?
It was America's Most Wanted, yeah.
What was Unsolved Mysteries? That was
that guy, that creepy guy with the trench coat that would come out of fog?
Yeah, I want to be that guy.
I used to watch that show and I would get so scared. I would army crawl to my bed at night because I was like afraid someone was going to shoot.
You want to be that guy?
Ominous music.
Yeah, great. Good idol, Skip.
Can we just turn the lights off and crawl around?
Can we just have some dry ice here?
That's great. But you have one other event coming up towards the end of the year.
So we have one coming up in a couple months, not in Albuquerque, but next year we'll have it in Albuquerque. So Advocacy Conference is another thing that I've started, which is more of me thinking about how I can help families of the missing and murdered. And the first one's in Indianapolis, March 28th through the 30th. We are bringing together experts, nonprofits, the Indianapolis Metro Police Department's going to be there, the prosecutor's office is going to be there, as well as a bunch of families. And so we're going to get everybody in the same room. We're all going to talk about how we can move cases forward, and it's going to be an awesome experience. I'm just about to sign the contract for Albuquerque, which will be in September of next year. I know everyone's like, why wouldn't you do Albuquerque first? We had our reasons. We're doing Albuquerque second.
Well, isn't it exciting to kind of not, excuse the phrase, but nerd out people speaking your jargon, and you're going, this is everything I'm enthralled about. Like everyone here is speaking the same language, and now I get to dive deep and have like common discourse with like people that are in the know. That's got to be exciting. I remember, not to compare it to this, but my brother's in the gaming industry. He's a nerd. And they get together and they're like, oh my God, did you see the latest, whatever. Not to say you're doing that, but the same excitement when someone's if your passion, right? That's fun. I'm happy they're doing that, and I'd like to do a follow up when you bring it in Albuquerque to see like what we're amongst.
Yeah, you guys should come out and hang out with us for that weekend. It's going to be great. I think what I'm excited about, to your point, I think it's similar to what you're saying, is those magical moments where it's like, hey, I'm really stuck and I need help. And then there's somebody who's already done this, right? Who saw their case. We have Beth Holloway, Natalie Holloway's mom, coming to talk about hope.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we've got we have Nicole Schmidt, Gabby Petito's mom, coming to talk about turning her tragedy into advocacy. There's so many awesome family members that are out there doing the work, changing laws, that are going to be there to inspire everybody.
And you can truly relate, like, and I know a lot of people are caring and have empathy, but like, it does help to go, you just know, like maybe even a hug transcends that, right? You know exactly, maybe no words are spoken.
Sometimes it's just a glance.
Yeah, that's big.
And I think that's the beauty of Advocacy Conference, and I'm excited about what's going to come out of that, is that community and taking away that sense of loneliness from those families and giving them just a little bit of peace for a weekend.
Well, again, the mission is to empower families by providing them with the necessary resources and referrals to advocate for their missing or murdered loved ones. Angels Voices. Eric, we really appreciate you coming on the show, man. We'll have links to all of your websites and how people can get involved and donate as well.
Yeah, you're doing good work. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, appreciate it. Coming up next, here's why you're going to want to stay tuned. It's everybody's favorite Skip's Tips. This is UABQ.
Welcome back. Thank you, Eric, for coming by the show. A very serious but important message to be sent out. A lot of people have had interest in recut it. I don't know where I was headed.
Just keep going. Just keep going. No.
We can cut. Okay.
he'll edit.
Thank you, Eric, for coming on the show. A very serious tone, but plenty of information there. Now we are facing Skip's Tips.
Oh, yeah.
Shit. Skip's Tips, anything that saves us time, makes us more money, or allows us to have more fun in real estate or real life. Hey, Albuquerque, housing inventory is on the rise, which means homes are sitting a little bit longer on the market. For sellers, this means that pricing your home is more important than ever. The last thing you want to do is overprice it and have your listing become stagnant on the market. For buyers, even though mortgage rates are a little bit higher than you want them to be, the time to buy is now. So if you're pre-qualified and ready to buy, there are some deals to be had. Let's think about it. If there was a decrease in mortgage rates, that's going to cause an increase in buyer demand as more buyers hit the market, which means prices are going to continue to rise. So, whether you're buying or selling in this market, let's connect to discuss a comprehensive strategy to put you in the best position possible to be successful in this market. Oh, and share this with a friend and tell them Skip said so.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Albuquerque, how's it going?
Oh, housing is, how about at housing?
How we doing? So, it's real quick, just we spoke about that. One of my favorite Skip quotes is, the best time to buy a house is yesterday. And meaning that houses are only going to cost more. Lock one down now. The same house you go buy a year later is going to inevitably cost $20,000, $25,000, $40,000 more. Get the house, relock or refinance later. But I mean, get the house.
Same
now.
strategy with women, dude. Just get one and lock them down. They're only going to go up in maintenance and
cost more.
Yeah, yeah. You guys buy women
now.
Anyways, this is the kind of banter you'll get on UABQ every Wednesday and Sunday here on the Education Channel.
Saving marriages, baby carriages, norovirus.
This is all about UABQ.
You're watching UABQ.